So I will leave it to Chris to start the presentation, and thank you all for coming. Chris, if you saw in the email that I sent out, is a professional nutritional scientist. She's worked in academia and in industry, and she's as we like to say, full disclosure, she's starting a new company, and she'll have a little bit about that at the end, where she's going to be giving nutrition consulting. So I'll let her talk about that later, but go ahead and take it away, Chris. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, all of you, for coming. Usually I just have students paying for my lectures, but it's even more fun when it's free. People just come when they volunteering their time to listen to me. So I'm excited to do this. So thinking about nutrition and food, everybody has thoughts about food. So tell me something about, what is your favorite indulgent food that you consider least healthy? What do you think is not healthy but really yummy? You want it?
Pizza.
Pizza? Okay.
Yes.
State sticky buns.
Sticky buns. Yeah, okay. That's a good one.
Ice
Chocolate chip
cream.
cookies.
Ice cream.
Chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
I would say beer. I would say beer. I know that's, you shouldn't be doing too much of that.
That's in the other category. What is your favorite healthy food?
Oh, beer's in the healthy food?
So let's transition to that one. What is something that you really enjoy eating that you think is healthy?
I eat lots of fruit and vegetables. I always find it funny when you see these articles that say, here's how to get in shape. 3 things you can do. Eat more vegetables, eat more fruits, and then get more exercise. And I'm like, yeah, got all that. Now what?
No, I would say wild Maine blueberries.
Oh,
Ooh.
yes, the little blueberries. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anything else that you really like the taste of when you think about healthy food?
Sauteed spinach and olive oil with garlic.
Yeah, that's nice.
Beans are, yeah, and that line is, yeah, beans and greens is delicious.
Right. We eat that too. Andy makes it. So you can see what I'm getting at. A lot of what we consider to be really indulgent is usually also goes hand in hand with less healthy. But it's a little bit tougher when we start thinking about, what is delicious, but also healthy. And I find with a lot of my students, they haven't yet developed a good appetite or palate for healthy food. But we're older, and most of us have, developed more mature tastes and like healthy foods as well. So that really begs the question, what is a healthy diet? And lots of people have opinions. But as a scientist, this is what I consider to be a healthy diet. It actually provides all the essential nutrients. And I see that is usually missing in most things that you see marketed towards the masses. They don't talk about nutrients, right? They really just kind of gloss it over. It also has to be—
scientist. Do you want to hear it?
Oh, she's talking. You're mute yourself, whoever you are. Talking to somebody else, I hear. It has to be sustainable, so it has to be something that you can follow, and it's flexible for your lifestyle. It satisfies you. You can afford it. It's not all these crazy esoteric foods, and you have to prepare all these different diets, that you're not used to. Also, it has to be preventative. It has to support your health. So it has to provide all those essential nutrients so you don't have deficiencies, but it should also be promoting your healthiest self and helping to prevent some of the chronic diseases that we have. So what are those essential nutrients? And I think this is where it becomes difficult for a lot of people because they really don't know all of the nutrients or how to get them. So how are you supposed to know if you're eating a healthy diet that has all the essential nutrients when it's this complicated? We have all of the water-soluble vitamins, the fat-soluble vitamins. We have all the major minerals, the trace minerals. Some we're not quite sure about. And then, of course, we have our macronutrients, carbohydrates, where we need the glucose. We have fats, lipids, which can be fats and oils. And then, of course, we have amino acids, and we need the essential amino acids in the proteins that we eat. So we have the macronutrients, but we have all of these micronutrients as well. So it's a lot to keep tabs on. No one's going to be able to figure that all out for themselves. But we certainly hear, a lot about diet plans that we should follow. And this is my take on what is not a healthy diet. So healthy diets don't consider the nutrients. They have some sort of, binary focus on one aspect of diet. It could be on weight loss. It could be on a macronutrient, high protein, low carb, high carb, low fat, high fat. Just focusing on one macronutrient is not a healthy diet either. Or maybe just focusing on getting more omega-3s or something like that. That is not a healthy diet because it's not considering all of the, it can even become aversive. You just don't want to eat that ever again. Maybe it has too much protein. You don't want to eat that. It doesn't consider effects on your long-term health and preventing chronic disease. And most of these kind of diets focus on some kind of avoidance. So there's things that you're supposed to stay away from. Okay, does this all sound familiar? What you see is pitched to you?
Yeah.
And a lot of this is based on fear mongering. So a lot of what you see in packaged food as well is fear mongering. It's about selling you something that seems better than something else because maybe that other thing has something in it that's bad for you. And right now, fear is really selling food. A lot of this is going on. And I've worked with marketers who do this, and they do focus groups of consumers and find out what they're afraid of. They don't want to eat things that are not natural. They're afraid of pesticides, so they want to only eat organic. They're afraid of GMOs. Now plants have become better than anything else, right? They're on a pedestal. So it's really about, avoiding things and evoking some kind of fear when you look at the packaging and you see all of these claims on the food. But this too is not a healthy diet. This is just a way to pitch products to you. So how do you know if you're getting a healthy diet? And it really comes down to, having healthy and varied choices of foods. There's no superfoods. There's a lot of different foods that we can eat, but you can just eat bananas and apples. You don't have to eat kumquats and pomegranates. They're all fresh fruits and vegetables. That doesn't have to be some new superfood of the month. So if you really want your diet to be healthy, you really have to have healthy and varied choices. And what does that mean exactly? First of all, follow science, not influencers. But here's one exception. I follow a scientific influencer. So if you're following, and they're very few and far between, right? Most of them have no background and are not worth following. So don't follow any influencers or trends. It's about following science and what we already know. And what we already know can really be captured just in some of the simple programs that have already been developed. And this stuff, is really boring. It just reminds us of home economics, right? We should eat fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. And those are the major food groups. But when you dig into it, it's not boring at all. So this program, the MyPlate, is really a translation. It's the end product of a very in-depth process that starts with a thorough review of all the nutrition science. And this is done every 5 years. There's an advisory committee that gets together. They meet many times and they review all of the research in nutrition on all of those nutrients. So you can imagine it's a pretty massive endeavor. They produce a report, and it's a scientific review done by independent scientists. One of my mentors once served on this committee. And it's a huge amount of work. You know, it took like half of her time just working on this committee. So these are all nutrition scientists, some are medical people, and they are all volunteers that work on this committee. They produced this report. The last one that was produced last year is 835 pages. So you can read it if you like. If you really want to know the nutrition science, this is what you need to do, is read this report. So you're not going to do that, but I thumb through it every time it comes out, because to me, this is the Bible, and it updates all of the nutrition science for me. I might have seen some of the topics, but I haven't kept up on everything. This captures everything. This gets distilled down into the dietary guidelines. This document is produced by the government. So it's the USDA and Health and Human Services that are responsible for this. They have to translate this 835-page report into the dietary guidelines. This is really the foundation for all nutrition programs in the United States. And it's also a really good tool for professionals and even lay people. You can read this document. You can look at the evidence that they've reviewed and decide for yourself if that makes sense. This then gets distilled down into MyPlate. So this is not just coming out of thin air. This has to be supported by the science. And every year we get more and more in-depth science, but you know what? The fundamentals pretty well stay the same. We just learn more about why fruits and vegetables are important. But how much we need and the proportions and how to do it hasn't really changed that much. But this year's was especially a really good addition. They've also added infants and for pregnant women. So there's advice in there for everyone of every age. So MyPlate is all available to everybody. You can just go online, myplate.gov, and go into all the different food groups. It tells you how much you should eat, tells you how it's measured, gives you lists of ideas for choosing from all these categories, and you can keep track yourself on how well you're meeting the MyPlate requirements. They have a great kitchen as well, with tools, resources, and lots of recipes. And I get my students to explore the MyPlate kitchen and look at the recipes, because they're more economical and much easier to follow than a lot of what you see. And they also have a full nutritional analysis. So that's much better than what you see in a lot of different recipe collections that don't even really look at the nutrition. So I highly recommend exploring this resource. And why it's important is the way that the MyPlate recommendations have been developed is that they help. What they do is ensure that you meet all of the essential nutrients. So you don't have to measure, go through and figure out how much vitamin A and how many foods and all those different nutrients. If you follow the MyPlate groupings and meet the required servings within each group, you are guaranteed to get all of your essential nutrients. So that is a really great shortcut. And I'll show you some examples of that shortly. Not only do you get the essential nutrients in all these food groups, but you're also getting a lot of phytochemicals. And this is what's really hot in nutrition right now. Not just the essential nutrients. We already know quite a lot about those. Some of that research is like 100 years old. But what's emerging is that there are all these other substances in food, which we call phytochemicals, that have effects on our physiology. So these are grouped into different groupings here. A lot of it's under the polyphenolics. You might have heard of polyphenols. There's polyphenols in tea and coffee and wine. And there's different types, flavonoids, phenolic acids, flavones, flavonols, isoflavones in soy. All of these are being studied extensively. So maybe you've heard about blueberries. Well, they have anthocyanins. So that's a very specific type of polyphenol, and there's a lot of research on that class of chemicals. So when you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, you're getting all of these phytochemicals as well. So what do we eat though? So that's what we should be eating, but what do we actually eat and why? This is just a snapshot of what Americans eat. This is intake below what we should be eating. This is intake at the recommendation or above. So, you know, we don't eat enough vegetables, but can you see there? It's like 90% of people don't get enough vegetables. I mean, that's kind of sad, isn't it? Fruit is almost as bad. We do eat fair amount of grains, but not enough whole grains. And even overall, our grains, the average is still a little low. We don't get enough dairy at all. And especially now, people are really moving away from dairy. Some of the plant-based substitutes can be just as good though. They're heavily fortified now. So you can still get a good amount of nutrients from some of these plant-based milks. Protein foods, most people do get enough. There are some populations, it's usually that they're not eating enough calories. But most people who have a stable body weight are getting enough protein. We don't eat enough liquid oils. We eat too much solid fat. Of course, we're really good at getting enough sugar. We're excellent at getting enough saturated fat. And we do a great job on sodium, way over the AI. So congratulations. We're doing well on some things. The things we're not supposed to eat a lot of is what we do get in our diets. And why does this happen? I think, you know, the largest contributing factor is that we eat 50% of our food dollar away from home. And just think about that. You know, 100 years ago, what was that number? 5%. Now we eat 50% outside of the home. So we don't have control over what is happening to our food. We eat whatever we get through the drive-through window or whatever the chef decides is healthy for us. And most chefs are not thinking at all about your health when they throw in a quarter cup of butter or, you know, liberally salted or whatever oils they're using. You know, it's all about the taste.
Christine, question. Yeah. That's a dollar figure, yes?
Yes, 50% of our dollars. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, let's face it, I think when we eat out, it's a lot more money than eating at home. So we're still eating most of our meals at home, but half of our money goes to restaurants and takeout joints, that kind of thing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but a smaller percentage of that is to real sit-down dining. A lot of it is to fast food.
Is that right?
So
okay.
A lot of it's inexpensive. So even though it's 50%, much of that is inexpensive food as well.
Okay.
So we're getting a lot outside the home for sure. Let me just scroll down this way here. I like to use the sidebar instead of my mouse sometimes goes too many slides down. So what are the consequences? When you eat out a lot, you can't control what you're getting. And then actually, you know, a lot of people want value for their money too, right? They want large portions. They don't want to be served a very small char-boiled chicken breast on a whole grain bun, right? That would be a healthier option, but that's not what we want when we eat out. We often indulge. So when you go out and you sit down at the menu, you know, a lot of people are thinking about what do I really want right now? What would be really tasty right now? Not what is the healthiest thing for me. So when half of our food dollar is spent that way, we are going to indulge. So we end up eating food that's energy dense and nutrient poor, and that fuels overeating.
Christine, what is energy dense food?
There we go. Nice question,
okay.
Bob.
All right, sorry.
So good. I like questions that lead right into my next slide. So you can see that in this visual. High energy dense food is one that gives you a lot of calories, but not a lot of volume. It doesn't take up a lot of space on the plate. This is 1,575 calories, but so is this. So they have exactly the same calories, but look at the energy density. You're getting all of the calories in this small amount of food. You're probably still going to be very hungry. But when you're eating it in fruits and vegetables and whole grains, you're getting a lot more volume of food. I mean, just visually, can you imagine how long it would take to eat all of this? Exactly the same calories, but this is going to fill you up. Now, we don't always want to eat this many vegetables. This is a little extreme, but it makes the point. Eating more fruits and vegetables gives you more food than eating really energy dense takeout type of foods. And also this one is nutrient dense. I mean, this is going to have a ton of nutrients compared to this one. Think about that fruits and vegetables, you know, that lopsided graph I showed you. This one is giving you the ones on the bottom, giving you the sugar, the saturated fat, the sodium. This one is giving you all of the nutrients. It's giving you the, you know, the vegetables, the fruit, and then along with that, you're going to get all of the vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals. So this is more what we need to be striving for, and we need to minimize this. Obviously, you know, we're going to eat some of both, aren't we? So maybe once in a while we'll eat some energy dense, but then we should be thinking about the rest of our day, you know, and the rest of our week. We should be striving for a diet that looks more like this. So I'm going to show you some data. You know, I have a lot of students that are very young, 19 years old. Many are athletes and they're taking nutrition as an elective. And a lot of them are really focusing on protein right now, more than I ever imagined, actually. Many of them take protein powder every day as just their everyday diet. This one is a male athlete in my class, and he tells me he wants to build muscle, and a lot of them say that. So this is his diet for one day. What do you see there?
A lot of protein.
Yeah. How many fruits and vegetables?
I know he's
Avocado is the
eating
only
whites,
fruit.
but no eggs.
I know, he's just not even eating the yolks, which have
Yeah.
the carotenoids in them. Which, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me show you his analysis then. They have to analyze their diet. So this is what he's getting. He's getting some grains, 64%, 13% vegetables, 0 fruit, 8 dairy, and 286% protein. This is a lopsided diet. So just using the MyPlate and measuring these things, you get a really good snapshot on what your diet is. And then what is the result of that? Because of this profile, he's getting 10% of his vitamin A, 17% of his vitamin C, and 32% of his vitamin E. These are the antioxidant vitamins. You know, he's an athlete. He's working out very hard. He's producing oxidative stress every day, but not getting the antioxidant vitamins that he needs in his diet. So this is actually probably in the long run detrimental to his health.
So he could end up getting protein breakdown.
He could have damage in different ways because of oxidative stress. And who knows, you know, it could damage your DNA. I don't know.
Right.
It's all theoretical, but it's definitely a contributing factor. Antioxidant vitamins protect you from cancer. That's one of their roles. So obviously he's not eating a diet that is preventative. He's eating a diet that actually may be stress on his body by just focusing on protein. I show you my sister's diet. She volunteered to do my analysis program with me. So she recorded her intake, and what do you see right off the bat in terms of the number of items?
Yeah.
Big meals a day plus a snack.
Yeah, and what do you see? A long, long list, right? Variety, all sorts of different things. It might look like something that you would eat. It certainly looks like my diet too. Her and I are very much alike, including what we eat. So, you know, granola with yogurt, some cheese. She had rye bread. She put avocado on it, fish for dinner, sweet potato fries. She had strawberries. Then she told me the strawberries were getting old, so she had to eat them all. So she had another 2 cups. So she picked out on strawberries. She had some sugar, a little tiny bit salt, mixed nuts. She had some cookies. She had some wine. She had a lot of goldfish crackers. So what do you think that analysis is going to look like?
More balanced.
Yeah, look at that. 91,
wow.
96, 97,
Wow.
77, 104. This is what you're trying to get to. And the analysis that I do measures all of these things so people can see exactly what they're getting. What do you see with the vitamins?
Yeah.
The vitamin A, actually a lot came from the sweet potato fries.
Yeah.
Vitamin C, all those strawberries she pigged out on.
Yeah.
And enough vitamin E. She ate a lot of nuts and she had different oils.
Christine,
So
can you have too many vitamins?
The fat soluble ones you don't want to have too many of, but all these water soluble ones are fine. You just
Okay.
get rid of the excess. It's fine to have all of these B vitamins. You don't want too much vitamin A and you don't want too much vitamin D, but
Okay.
and E as well, but the others are fine. It's a good
Okay.
question. So there's another one of my tips for healthy eating. If you use MyPlate as your home base, it's a really good way to start to think about your diet and to plan it and to be more conscientious about actually looking at all those categories and seeing how well you're doing. Using it as your home base, as I say. Okay, so now I'm going to transition a little bit more into performance. And I just found this great new document that came out that's really a great review of the science and pulls everything together. So I'm sharing this with you. It's actually from the United States Anti-Doping Association. So they wanted to have a nutrition guide for athletes that also covers supplements and things that might be illegal. But overall, the nutrition guide is really, really excellent. And the best source that I found that's really accessible to consumers. You can download it. You can look at the recommendations. They're very straightforward. So once you're building on the base of a MyPlate diet, there are some extra, considerations for athletics. First, carbohydrate is the master fuel. Right now, for some reason, keto diets are hot, even for athletes. And it's really like putting a ball and chain around your leg. Why would you even do that? Maybe you can adapt to a high fat, high protein diet, but it's much easier to just eat a carbohydrate based diet for athletics. It's going to give you much better fueling. And the science base is robust. There's no question about that. And it's pretty easy to get enough carbohydrate. So this is just an example. If a person weighs 150 pounds, and this is right from the guide, and there's this is the carbohydrates that you get in a gram, and you multiply by how much that they should be eating. So you multiply their weight in kilograms by 4, and that gives you their daily carbohydrate intake. Said that backwards. So you can see the result, 272 grams. Now, if you relate that to an overall diet of what we typically eat, that makes really good sense. That's 1,088 calories from carbs. That's about 44% carbohydrate. There's still plenty of room for fat and protein. And this can actually be much, much higher. This is really minimal. This is like the minimum. You can go much, much higher on carbohydrate. So we need carbohydrate. We need to eat it every day because we don't store very much. We know we have glycogen, but how much glycogen do we actually have? We only have about 2,000 calories. And if you run a marathon, it's about 100 calories a mile, so about 2,600 calories. So you would be completely out of fuel and would feel horrible, like crawling across the finish line if you didn't take some in while you were exercising. So we can't really store enough glycogen to get us through long endurance sports. And that includes cycling. If you're out there for 3 or 4 hours, you're going to burn through a good amount of the glycogen in your muscle. And you could start to feel bad at about 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So that's the limit. So that's why we need to take it in. And what kind of carbohydrates do we eat? Well, more bad news. This is the top 10 sources of carbohydrate in the American diet. Just have a look at that. What's that? Soft drinks, sugar, cookies, well, flour and sugar, cakes, flour and sugar, donuts, fried, flour and sugar, sugar. That's pathetic. Those are our top sources of carbohydrates. But you know, around the world, well, my menu's in the way here, just a minute. Can you see that bottom?
Not
My-
the whole thing.
Let me just shrink it a tad, because there. So around the world in traditional cuisines, most of them eat far more carbohydrate than we do. 70 to 80% of their calories from carbohydrate. And they look more like this. You know, they have a lot more whole grains. They have a greater variety of different grains. They have, you know, wheat, but also rice, legumes, fruits and vegetables. You know, this is what traditional diets look like. Look at ours. I mean, we really need to change our thinking. I think maybe most of us in the club probably eat a lot of things like this, but we need to be aware that it's really easy not to get this unless you strive for it, because this is mostly what we're getting. And what does that look like in terms of foods? So this would be 1,364 calories, 341 grams of carbohydrate. This is what that would look like from the types of foods that we eat. A potato, Coca-Cola, pancakes. When you get pancakes, do you get white ones? You know, do you eat white bread, white bagels, white pasta? Look at the fiber, 12 grams of fiber in all those carbohydrates. That's like nothing. That's way low, but that's the kind of stuff that we eat routinely.
I don't.
Good. So here's our mean fiber intake. And this shows it hasn't changed one iota between 1999 and 2008. And you can go on, it looks exactly the same. The average between males and females is about 16 grams per day. The minimum is 25 on the food label, but if you eat more calories, say your calorie intake is 2,600, you need closer to 30 grams of fiber. So we are nowhere near getting the amount of fiber that we need. And it's totally understandable because of the types of carbohydrates that we eat. And because we eat those carbohydrates, we're also not getting all the phytochemicals.
Read all this.
What was that? Oh, sorry, someone unmuted for a minute. So you can see all the different phytochemicals. This is a slightly different view than what I just showed you, where it comes from in all the fruits and vegetables. But guess what? All of those phytochemicals also affect sports performance. So it's not only preventative for different diseases, but it's also important for energy usage and for recovery. A lot of work going on here in terms of phytochemicals and recovery. And again, you don't have to buy anything special to get all of these polyphenols. You just need to eat the fruits and vegetables. And it can be apples and bananas. It doesn't have to be anything exotic. So carbohydrate intake during exercise, of course, is going to be important. And this is right from the guide, and you can read more about it. But if we don't have enough glycogen to get you through a ride, you're going to have to get some in. And you can do it either as solid or in a drink form, as long as you also drink a lot of water so that you can absorb it. So there are guidelines for what you should be drinking. So you want to have a beverage that has lower concentration of the carbohydrate. And I'll show you why in a minute.
Oh.
And then you need the water to absorb it. So if you're eating a solid, you're going to need to drink some water too. And if it's not diluted enough, you can get abdominal pain because your stomach doesn't empty as well. If you're sprinting or doing a century with a fast group, you might need to have even more delivery, and you might need gels or something that's even faster if you're really burning a lot. So the reason why you want to have different types of carbohydrates, which was stated in here, if you have gels or drinks that have different forms of sugar, sometimes you'll see that they have maltodextrin, fructose, glucose. The reason for that is that we have different mechanisms for absorbing those different types of sugars. So when you have a couple of different types of sugars, they can all be absorbed through their own transport system, and you can absorb it more efficiently than if you just had one type of sugar. That's why you see maltodextrin in Gatorade, because you do absorb it faster. Now, all the sugars that you absorb, whether they're glucose, fructose, or galactose, all get converted to glucose in the liver. And you need the glucose for fuel. So if you're taking in a lot of fructose, it's got to go to the liver first and be converted to glucose. So you want to have drinks that provide you glucose as well. And maltodextrin is broken down into glucose very quickly. So you'll get it more readily into your bloodstream rather than having to convert the fructose into glucose. So fruit juices have a lot of fructose. And they're also too concentrated. They just don't work well. I think anyone who's ever tried to drink apple juice on a ride will tell you it doesn't work very well. You're not going to feel very good.
Christine, how about diluting, any of these juices? Or I remember people used to talk about a half a bottle of water, half a bottle of Coke.
Yeah, I'll show you that. That's on the next slide, Bob. Yeah,
Okay,
right
fine.
after this. Yeah.
Okay.
So the
Chris,
reason
I have a
why,
question.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Doesn't the temperature of the water play a role in how quickly you absorb?
No,
No, not at all?
no,
Okay.
no. It's really all just about the concentration of solutes in that beverage as it sits in your stomach. And the reason is because of the effects on osmolality. Remember osmosis in middle school? And then how well it empties from your stomach. So you only absorb about 20% of your liquids from your stomach. 80% is coming from the small intestine. So you want it to empty out of your stomach as fast as possible, because those transporters where it's being absorbed is in your small intestine. So you need to get it through there quickly. You don't want it sitting in your stomach because it's not going to absorb. If you have something that's very concentrated, that's hypertonic, has a really high concentration, that can slow the emptying of your stomach. Okay? It can actually draw fluid out of your stomach, out of your tissues into your stomach, right? Because of the osmotic pressure. So it'll pull water into your stomach and it won't empty. That's what happens if you drank a Coca-Cola or an apple juice while you're riding. It's just not going to go into your small intestine fast enough. Now, if it's really, really dilute, say water or something really close to water, it can actually pull sodium out of your tissues because it's also through the osmotic gradient. So the sodium will come into your stomach because it's full of water. If you're really sweating a lot and you're drinking a lot of water, that can lead to what's called hyponatremia, where you've pulled out so much sodium, you can actually, really have a severe result. It can actually cause death from having severe changes in the sodium in your blood. And that's still really rare. But if you're doing a hard biking event and you need energy and you need to absorb it quickly, water is not your best choice in that situation. You're better off having something that's called, it's isotonic, which is similar. That means it has the same concentration as your blood. So your blood is like 280 to 300. If you have something that's similar, then it won't cause this change in the stomach. You won't be absorbing minerals from your tissues, and it will empty as well. So that's the best, is to have a solution that has water, carbohydrate, and electrolytes in it, but in a very low concentration.
That'd be typically like Noon tablets. And that, oh, here it is. Never mind.
Yeah, so the best absorption is in this range. Gatorade's actually a little high. It's good to dilute it a little bit. I dilute mine a bit just because it can be a little bit too high. But look at Coke, 650 versus Pedialyte, which is 270. So this is really the ideal range in here. If it's Cytomax is also fine. You know, it's not as light as water. Water has hardly any solutes in it whatsoever. So this will also work pretty good, but this is ideal in terms of the absorption and transport into your small intestine. And then when it gets there, you will absorb the sugars, and the sodium also helps the absorption. It's not that you lost so much salt and you need sodium. The sodium actually just helps with the transport of the fluid. So it speeds it up. So dehydration is a problem even in non-cyclists. Just in the population, a certain percentage is fluid intake is a problem, and people don't watch it. And borderline hydration is estimated 40% of adults. So, you know, if you've been cycling a lot and not paying attention to your hydration, you could easily be down a bit. And the best way to find out is not really just by measuring your fluid intake, it's by looking at your urine. The idea is not to be white or clear. That's too low. You want it some color in it, but you know, in this range. Sometimes it's hard to tell when you look in the toilet, right? Because it gets all dispersed. So you kind of have to guess what it was when it went in. But if it was really important, if you were an athlete, you might pee into a little bottle just to see, you know, to make sure that your hydration is okay. Also, after cycling, if you have really hard bouts, or say you're cycling Bob's ride on Saturday and Victor's ride on Sunday, you might actually have your glycogen stores depleted too much, and on Sunday, you're not going to be able to keep up with Victor. So you have to make sure you refuel after one bout and before the next one. And there's all sorts of ideas, you know, any food will work, right? Just start eating when you stop, and make sure you get some high carbohydrate foods that day. You can have protein in it as well, which will help repair any muscle damage that you had from cycling.
Christine, I have a question about the protein stuff. So sorry, I'm so dark. So there's a lot of different, you know, recovery powders, recovery mixes that they say, you know, you should take within 30 minutes of finishing a hard effort. How beneficial do you think they are? I mean, to me, they seem to make a difference. And I don't know whether it's psychological or whether it's real, but my muscles feel better and less tired and less sore the next day when I go ride again. So, you know, they're loaded with protein is primarily what they are. Do you find that they have actual value, or is it just, you know, it's all mental? In my case, it makes me feel better because I think they're loaded in protein and I feel better.
Great question, Chris. That's coming up.
Okay.
That's my next topic. Protein for recovery. Excellent question. So yes, when you do have really hard bouts and you do have damage to your muscle tissue, it is good to have some protein. So addition of protein in that half-hour window after can help to promote recovery. And it increases the synthesis rate of protein in the muscle by, you know, I don't know, not a huge amount, but a meaningful amount for athletes. So it's pretty well established in the literature that having protein in your recovery meal is a good idea. And if you can't get to a meal right away, you might want to have a supplement or something that's easy, like a Boost or something that you can drink. When I used to do long runs in the city, I would have some cold Boost in my trunk that I could drink right away while I was driving home. But you also want to have carbohydrate with it. So you need to be replenishing your glycogen stores at the same time and providing fuel. That protein will not do a lot of good if there's no carbs with it, because you still need to have the carbohydrate as well. So the studies show you want to have both.
Okay. Yeah.
And the range for recovery, I think Oh, I thought I had it in here. It's in the document. 20 grams of protein in the recovery period is adequate.
Okay.
And the synthesis rate doesn't get much higher, even if you get a lot more protein. We're not robots. We can't make more. So there's like a plateau. Once you get to 20 grams, maybe 25, but you're not going to synthesize much more.
Thank you.
Sometimes after after a hard ride, I actually crave certain things. I mean, and some of it is obvious. Like I can remember once finishing a Century ride, and it was a hard day for a number of reasons. It was stressful, and I went to Wegmans and I bought a bag of potato chips, and I bought a watermelon, and that was my dinner. and I just thought, I opened up the bag of potato chips thinking, I'm just gonna have a few of these on my way home, and it was an 8-ounce bag, and they were gone by the time I got home.
Yeah, I know.
And that watermelon, I ate half of it, which is not unusual for me. But the cravings are kind of funny, and that was obvious because I lost a lot of water and I needed salt. But the protein thing is interesting to me because I do find that sometimes I crave chicken. Like I'm craving protein when I'm done.
Yeah, there's been some research done on craving and nutrients, and that's just never really well supported that we have that kind of knowledge. It's just more about what our experience has been in the past and what our preferences are, especially childhood. I remember being really hungry when I was a kid, and a bag of potato chips would just taste delicious. So yeah, that's kind of what I crave, but maybe it's just because that's my experience.
So what do you do in situations? Because when I'm done a ride, I don't want to eat. Like my stomach, is sensitive from riding and the hydration I do during the riding. So normally what I'll do is I'll have a protein drink. And now I do want to pay attention to the carbohydrates. So would you take that protein drink and potentially supplement it with a gel block or something like that to get the carbohydrates in?
I think just a cold boost,
Yeah.
You could probably sip. That's about all I want to. I don't want to eat right away.
Yeah.
So I will just sip a cold boost for the immediate. And then that's enough to get the amino acids into your bloodstream and start the process. And then maybe you'll eat in an hour or so.
Yeah, that's what I find. Like, I get done a workout and it's at least an hour and a half before I feel like eating.
Yeah, me too, especially if it's a hard run.
Yeah.
So most of us get enough protein. Getting enough protein in our diet is not a problem at all. And mostly what we eat is sufficient, even if we're exercising hard. And I just showed some examples here. If your diet is 19% protein, for a 180-pound male, they need 122 grams. That would give them 124. A female would be getting 105, and they need 99. And this is for a really exercising athlete, because the typical requirement is only 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And I use the factor of 1.5, so almost double. But like I said, we're not machines. We actually can't incorporate anymore. We just don't have the machinery to build muscle that quickly. So as I said, it's easy to get enough protein. This is my sister. Just with that diet I showed you, she's getting 160% of what she needs. My daughter, also just an ordinary diet, she's getting 180% of her protein needs. So for non-athletes, everybody's getting enough protein. And the reason here is, we can't metabolize any more protein. When we have excess intake, we have to get rid of it. Those amino acids, when we eat protein, it's broken down into individual amino acids. And they go into our amino acid pool, which is in all of our cells in the cytoplasm. It's only 100 grams. That's all we keep in storage. We're continually turning over body protein. So we're breaking down about a pound a day and building up a pound a day. And then we can synthesize some of the non-essential amino acids, but that pool doesn't change. So you can't become like a mighty man and just be a protein building machine. It doesn't work that way. We have to get rid of it, and we get rid of it through the kidneys. So we chop off the NH3, the ammonia group, and then we use the glucose part of the amino acid for fuel. And we will use it right away for fuel, or we'll store it as fat if we overate. If we eat too much protein, it gets stored as fat. And I think everybody just knows that, right? I'm showing it to you here in the metabolism, but we all know it doesn't matter what you eat. If you eat too much of any macronutrient, it's going to be converted to fat. But protein is different. We can't store a lot of amino acids. We have to get rid of the excess nitrogen, and that goes out through the kidneys. And that's not harmful. There's a lot of myths about this damaging the kidneys, but anybody with normal, healthy kidney function can get rid of the extra amino acids. So fat as fuel is the ideal thing, right? We ride our bikes so that we can stay slim. So we burn fat. So fat is the primary fuel for light to moderate intensity exercise, and that includes cycling. So isn't that nice? That type of exercise does use a certain amount of fat, not just the glycogen stores. And here's an example, an average athlete will have about 2,000 calories in reserve in carbohydrates, but you've got 45,000 calories in reserve in fat. You can ride forever. Here's a funny graphic I found of that. If you're just burning glycogen, you can only go 80 kilometers. But if you tap into your fat cells, you can go 2,000 kilometers. Endless amount.
So how do we do that?
Yeah, I know. That's the trick, right? So cycling burns fat, and there's all sorts of things about how to burn more fat. One is caffeine. There's a lot of good data showing that caffeine will increase fat utilization. So you are burning more fat, but it's not a huge effect. And actually, it doesn't even seem to be a consistent effect. I've been looking in the literature, and some people, habitual caffeine users, don't seem to really have a big change. But just riding your bike for an extended period of time starts to kick in fat oxidation. And this is older data, this has been studied for a long time. You could see fat oxidation, and this is cycling. If you go for 3-hour biking, you will see at first you're doing this much from fat.
You listen to
going up
what are you doing
as you go. So your carbohydrate oxidation, you're burning your glycogen up pretty good here, but that comes down as you go. So, and if you take glycogen, if you take in glucose, you're going to feel fine.
nutrition video.
Oh, somebody needs to be muted. I think they're, okay, thanks. So you will burn fat, and it's the longer, you go, the more fat that you will burn. But there's all sorts of other myths about what helps you burn fat, and I haven't found anything that's really, like ephedra will help you burn more fat, but you might have a heart attack too, so don't want to do that. Most of them are stimulants, like powerful stimulants that you don't want to take, but they will help you burn more fat. They're just dangerous. So back to where I started, what is a healthy diet? You want a diet that gives you all the essential nutrients that you can follow, and that is preventative. And then all those little tweaks that help you in terms of performance. Now, some things, though, are really important that I want to stress. What really matters? Vitamin D really matters. Most people don't eat enough vitamin D, and there's a lot of new research coming out that it affects physical performance as well. So 77% of us are vitamin D deficient. So that includes many of us right now. And athletes don't have enough vitamin D. And there's more and more studies coming out showing that this interferes with skeletal muscle function. So that's something, if you're not taking a vitamin D supplement, it might be something you want to start. But don't take a high dose. Bob, this is one of the vitamins that the upper limit of toxicity, you could reach it just with a high dose supplement. You only want to take the 100% RDA.
Right.
Sodium and potassium matter. We eat far too much sodium, not enough potassium. And that also affects blood pressure, of course. And blood pressure is really important for an athlete as well. So we eat too much sodium, and a lot of it is because of the restaurant food that we're eating. So 71% of the sodium we get is from these prepared foods in restaurants. We don't get enough potassium. Everybody thinks about a banana, but there's more potassium in broccoli and potatoes, you know, in a wide variety of vegetables. When you eat too little potassium, it's usually a marker of low vegetable intake. So eating enough fruits and vegetables will guarantee enough potassium and also guarantee that you don't get too much sodium. This is the average intake. Here's our sodium. This is how much the American population eats. 3,600, 3,400. The upper limit is 2,300. Adequate intake is 1,500. So we're well over double what we need. Versus potassium, this is what women need, what men need, and you can see that both groups are only getting about 75% of what they need. So that's important. Saturated fat is important. Lots of new thinking about saturated fat, but it's all wrong. It's still the same, it's still true. Saturated fat increases cholesterol, increases risk for heart disease. It doesn't seem to matter, you know, what the established knowledge is. There's always somebody out there that says it's wrong. And I don't know what that is, but they want to say they have the right answer, right? Remember this Time magazine? You know, all of a sudden, saturated fat's okay. It's not. Don't believe them. That's what I worked on actually in my postdoc, was fatty acids. This is a study on coconut oil. Okay, sorry, actually, this is a meta-analysis of all the studies on coconut oil, increasing LDL cholesterol. These are all individual studies, and this is how much the increase was in LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. Pretty consistent across the board. This is like 25 milligrams per deciliter. This one is, you know, over 25. So if your LDL cholesterol is 100, eating a lot of coconut oil might make it 125. And that's considered high and increasing risk for heart disease. So there's no doubt that eating saturated fat increases risk for heart disease. And we should be aware of that and trying to eat things that have less saturated fat. Another thing that's important is fiber. I mentioned it before, we don't get nearly enough fiber. And I used to work for an ingredient company and we made fiber ingredients. One of them was an inulin, which we got from the agave plant in Mexico. And I was in charge of the research on that. So we did a nice study looking at how it affects the gut microbes. And that's a new emerging area of research that's really important. It's not just about constipation, you know, laxation. It's about how fiber supports a healthy gut. And it's really, this field is becoming very advanced. A lot of studies happening showing that eating a fiber-rich diet changes these microbes. It changes their activity, and that has a host of effects on our metabolism. And the theory is we don't eat enough fiber, we're starving these microbes, and we get larger populations of the pathogenic kind, and they are damaging our gut epithelial layer, and that's what's causing physiological problems through inflammation and activation of the immune system. So don't think of fiber just as, you know, the brown flecks in food that help you go. Fiber is much, much more important for your overall gut. And it affects athletic performance as well. A lot of research going on how exercise affects those microbes and how those microbes affect exercise performance. This is a really expanding area of research. So athletes need fiber too. And it's really getting into the individual species and figuring out which ones are involved. Just a few more points. So phenolics, I talked about phytochemicals in general, also really important. Think about all the colors in the fruits and vegetables, and then think about all the whole grains that you could be eating that have all of these phytochemicals. So these are all the sources. Cocoa, I think you've heard of them in wine, vegetables, chocolate, cereals, and it also affects your gut microbiota. So these polyphenols are having all sorts of different effects on our physiology that we're just starting to unravel, including the gut microbes. They love some of these polyphenols and they will grow. So to wrap up, use MyPlate as your home base to start to form a healthy diet. It's going to give you all of the essential nutrients that you need. There's lots of resources there, lots of recipes, really easy to use. And then if you want to have more specific nutrition related to athletic performance, I think this is really the best book out there. I've known Nancy Clark for decades. She's really one of the most respected nutritionists in the field, and she works with a lot of different athletic teams. And she also does one-on-one types of interactions. But this is a really good guidebook if you're looking for something more specific. And that's it. Anybody want to raise some topics for discussion or ask questions? I see that we just went over an hour.
Well done, Christine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned dairy early on as a food group, and dairy gets a lot of bad press. And actually, when I'm thinking about your original questions, the thing that I eat that I really enjoy is dairy. And I always just feel like I'm poisoning myself. But I don't drink, I actually happen to be lactose intolerant, but so I drink Lactaid milk, but I use that in my coffee. I like eating Greek yogurt. I've cut back a bit on cheese lately because of pandemic weight, but it's energy dense food, and I don't really need it right now. But so what's the deal with that? What is it? Is there something to be aware of? Is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of rhetoric about dairy right now, and it's really being driven by a lot of newcomers in the food industry that are driving these plant-based milks. But, real dairy is still a nutrient-dense food. It has a lot of inherent nutrients as well as calcium. But cheese does have a lot of saturated fat. Actually, I cut back a bit because I noticed my saturated fat was high, and it was mostly because of cheese. But it's still, within a healthy diet, it's still a very good food. It still has a lot of nutrients. It actually also has zoochemicals. So all this talk of phytochemicals from plants, there's also zoochemicals from animals that have beneficial effects on our physiology. And there's just starting to be more work on that. So we don't want to cut out all of those foods and replace them with something that's like a mock food that's got a whole pile of different ingredients, because that food, real whole food, still has all the beneficial things that it always did. But on the flip side, if a person doesn't want to drink dairy for whatever reason, and maybe they are a vegan, some of the plant-based milks are doing a pretty good job. They're really fortified now, and they provide a lot of different nutrients, including calcium and vitamin D. So I often tell my students, if they don't want to drink milk, drink plant-based milk, especially soy milk. It's pretty good food, actually. It's manufactured, but it's still got a lot of nutrients in it. And then there's other calcium fortified foods like orange juice, and you can even get vitamin D in orange juice. That will also give you the calcium. So dairy group in MyPlate is mostly about the calcium, and there's lots of other choices to get calcium in fortified foods.
I wanted to say something about potassium. Because I've gotten muscle cramps since I've been a kid. And when I go backpacking, I used to carry potassium and other things. And V8 and orange juice, you know, have 10 times the amount of potassium in them. So I always in my bag carry a small can of V8, which is like 10 times the amount of 10 times the amount of potassium that Gatorade has. And then I do, like you were saying, I do have to drink a commensurate amount of water, you know, too. But you know, I mean, I can have been almost doing nothing and wake up with cramping that I keep a bottle of water close to wherever I'm sleeping because I actually can't move. And I've, you know, it's been something I've managed for a lifetime. So I kind of know that it's between hydration and potassium. And I just, because I saw what you were saying about apple juice, and I thought you might be including orange juice. If I would stop at the Wawa, if they don't have V8, I might be drinking orange juice. And, you know, does that mean in your book that drinking more water to go along with that orange juice?
Only if you needed the hydration at that point. Only if you were trying to rehydrate and you needed to because you're in the middle of an activity. That's where it really matters. But in day-to-day life, you're going to absorb it slowly over the day. That's fine. It's not like you shouldn't drink a hypertonic drink. It's just not while you're in a situation where you need hydration quickly. That's where that applies. Orange juice is definitely a great source of potassium. And I used to work on the V8 brand when I was at Campbell Soup. I worked a lot on V8. It's one of my favorites. I even done studies with V8, looking at changes in lycopene in the skin. So good choice of a beverage, but and it's actually not that hypertonic. It is hypertonic, but not as much as orange juice is. But as to cramping, the research is just not definitive on whether it's potassium or not. I get it too, and I've tried potassium, magnesium, you know, I don't know. It's not clear. Yeah,
I've managed it well with potassium. Like if I'm backpacking, I don't have a whole lot of choices, you know. I carry a potassium salt or something, but then also making sure that I stay hydrated. You know? That's I don't want to divert the conversation, but when I saw you saying something about the apple, I thought maybe the apple juice and the orange juice. But I also know if I do drink the V8 or the orange juice, that I have to be really mindful of getting some water in because
it can make you feel thirstier.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, good point.
Someone has, Joyce has asked if Cold Boost is a milk-based product.
I don't know what it is. I'd have to see the label.
Okay.
I see two chats, but I know and we can share, Michelle, do you want to share the slides so they can get all the links?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, you know, food is a marketed commodity. So marketed commodities are just like any other one. It could be a new brand of Scotch tape or a new sticky note that's better than the old one. These are packaged food companies, are just consumer goods, and they aren't necessarily, it's not that they're not interested in your health. That's not what they do. They're not trying to sell you health. They're trying to sell a product. And so they need to find a way to claim things that will get your attention. But most of the time, it's a real overreach. So whenever you see a product, just be aware that someone is trying to sell you the product because that's what they do. You know, it's not like that product is going to fix a problem for you. It might not even do any of that. And it's not that they're evil, it's that they have a job to do and they have to sell something. You know, I knew the brand manager for Goldfish. That's $1 billion business. You know, can you imagine being told you need to increase sales by 10%? Like, what would you do? You're not going to put more fiber in them, right? That would just like, you'd lose your job in about 2 weeks.
But you can say they're organic, right?
They did do that, organic SKU, to appeal to those millennials that will only eat organic, but that's total waste, right? Like that is to me, it's just a non-thing. You should just ignore it. It's just a marketer doing their job. It tastes great. It's a nice snack, but it's not a healthy product for you. You know, you can just ignore it. You can ignore most of food marketing.
And the supplement industry is huge.
It
And
is.
so you mentioned vitamin D and
Yeah.
whatever, and I've always been of the assumption that because I eat the really well-balanced diet and have for most of my adult life, I still take a supplement, even though the research is, was pretty conclusive. I don't know. I just sort of figured, okay.
Well, you're a really good example, Michelle, because my sister wanted to know if she needed a multi-supplement. And so I did her diet analysis, and you saw her results. She's already like 200% of all the B vitamins, all the minerals look like that too. She doesn't need a multivitamin, but her
Right.
vitamin D is deficient, even though she eats salmon once in a while, she drinks milk. She's only getting like 30% of her vitamin D. Mine is deficient. I can't eat enough vitamin D sources to get enough. So I just take a vitamin D supplement all winter, but I've just read we don't even get enough in the summer with sunshine, that it's good to take it year round. But that's really one of the problem nutrients that we have a hard time getting in our diets. The multivitamin can be a total waste. You're just peeing it all out. And for some of the minerals that it can actually interfere with absorption. So you don't want to be 300% iron, 300% zinc. So I'm not a proponent of multivitamins, just as like a guarantee, because actually you're getting way too much if you're eating a balanced diet.
I have a question. There is so much confusion because it's not well controlled as to what supplements, even though they make claims that this vitamin D is better, et cetera, et cetera. How does the consumer know that the product that you're taking is doing the job that you think it's intended to do?
The consumer will know if they buy a national brand. The national brand, like, I don't know, what's a national supplement brand? Nature Made, Pfizer, the really big brands, they do very good quality control as well as formulate the most bioactive form. D3, vitamin D is the active form. There's no question. That's pretty easy. They're all that form. Most of the vitamins and minerals from national brands are going to be the right form for absorption and bioavailability. They do a good job. But as I said, a lot of those vitamins and minerals you don't need.
Say, Christine.
I was just thinking about vitamin D.
Yeah, the one that's vitamin D, I buy the CVS brand. It's the same form of vitamin D as the more expensive one, which is D3.
Jim.
Sounds like you can't go wrong with a peanut butter and jelly.
No, you can't.
Right.
No. On whole wheat bread even. But
Okay.
yeah. And even white bread is fortified. White bread provides folate, a lot of the B vitamins. A lot of the cereals now are fortified. I'm really surprised when I look at my students' nutrient analysis that most of the women are getting enough iron. I'm like, what? Iron's always been a problem. But it's because they're eating fortified cereals and they're getting much more iron than they used to. So fortification has changed a lot in the last 10 years and has really improved the nutrient intake for refined foods. And white bread is not as bad as it used to be because of that, because it's a fortified flour. And actually, when you buy organic, it's not fortified and it's less nutritious.
Wow.
Yeah, and I have tons of examples of that. Like milk is not fortified with D3. Anything that's organic is generally not fortified.
Thank you.
Can you talk a bit more about the gut flora?
The gut microbiota?
I feel like I feel like it might have been an intoxicated evening in Bike, Virginia, but there was a conversation. Doesn't Andy have like some rare bacteria.
Oh yeah, so we had our gut microbiota quantified. You can send in a poop sample, just a little smudge, and I did it for Andy's Christmas present. And they will send you back a report of all the species in your gut microbiota. And because I was a researcher in that area, I know quite a bit about that, looking at the names. And yeah, Andy has some strange taxa that are kind of rare.
Is it worth hearing that though? I mean, is there some practical application?
We don't know yet. Yeah,
Okay.
The short answer is we don't know yet what is a healthy gut microbiota.
Okay.
We know bifidobacteria and lactobacilli are really important, and they develop in infants. And some of those have been cultured, and you can even take the microbes, right, as probiotics.
Right.
But if you eat fiber, they will grow.
Okay.
And we call those the beneficial bacteria. But people can be completely healthy and have no bifidobacteria, zero. So it really begs the question is, what is a healthy gut microbiota? But we know when it is disturbed. And say you've had diarrhea, traveler's diarrhea is a really good example, and your microbes have been disturbed by a pathogen. Taking probiotics and taking more fiber can help to restore it. So you can fix a bad microbiota, but we don't always know what is a good one. And if yours is already good, you can't make it gooder. You know, it's already working great for you and you have no issues. The epithelial cells in there are probably totally healthy. Then there's nothing really, you know, just keep eating a lot of fiber. But it's expanding. You'll see lots more of it. And they're doing fecal transplants in hospitals for C. diff infections. So when a person gets a C. diff, they can take their microbiota out. They completely clean them out with laxatives and whatever. And then they give them an infusion of somebody else's. And it helps to reestablish it in their intestines.
Is there any information you can give us that would stymie some of the symptoms that we might get regarding the common cold? You hear a lot about
No, there's been so much work on zinc, vitamin C. Zinc actually has been shown to shorten the cold by like a half a day, but that's only if you're a little deficient in zinc, and most people aren't. And you can get too much zinc just from those lozenges, and then it'll interfere with your iron. So, you know, there's those kind of viruses, they're going to run their course, and there's no magic. Like if your immune system's already working at 100%, you can't make it 150%. It's the same kind of thing. It's already working really well. It's going to take 3 days for that cold to go through.
Another question. As long like endurance activities, 2-3 hours, how does that affect one's immune system short term during the recovery and then long term?
It takes a bit more than that. So not much effect of recreational riding like we do. But you know what? I just heard a really interesting report on people who hike the Appalachian Trail. When they come off that trail, they are much less healthy than when they started. Their arteries are less flexible. They do these studies on their arterial function, and it's impaired. And over exercising for long endurance events are a stress on the body. There can be damage in the heart. There's just inflammation, and you don't have enough antioxidant defenses. So too much is not a good thing, but what we do is probably not too much.
What do you know what too much is?
No, you know, they look at marathon runners who run really fast, or you know, these 100-mile races, things like that. But even a normal marathon at a slower speed is probably not going to give you any lasting damage.
Well, this is really interesting. Thank you so much.
Well, it was fun having you all online. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to show one last thing before we go. So I am starting this business called My Nutrimentals, and I do a complete diet analysis for people. and we do it online. And I guide people through it, and I give them a complete analysis of their diet. And I want to have some volunteers to go through the system with me. I'm calling them beta, my beta clients. And in return, I'd like to interview you, learn what you think about it, all your reactions, and then have a testimonial that I can use on my website. And I'd like to have a photo of you and a testimonial so I can promote it on my website. I need some testimonials from people. And then I have a LinkedIn page. And if you would follow me on LinkedIn, I'd like that. I've got 20 followers. I just launched like a couple of weeks ago. So people are starting to notice. So if anybody is interested in volunteering, you can go look at my website and click on the tab that says diet analysis, and you'll see what's involved. And then I would do that with you for free. So I usually charge $199.99. So you would get the analysis for free, but in exchange, I want to use you for a testimonial.
Sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I thought this would be a good group to look for volunteers. I've thought of other people that I know, but I don't know. I don't want to put my sister on there. You know, people say, well, that's just your sister. And some of the other people I know are just, they're already in nutrition. I don't want to use them. I don't want to put an RD up there.
I coach at the high school level, 3 seasons, cross country, indoor and outdoor track. And I just had an athlete. I know a little wee bit about nutrition, and he was having some issues. I said, send me your diet. And I gave him some stuff to fill out. Is a high school athlete something that you would consider doing?
No, my target group is you, 50-year-old adult, interested in their health, proactive. You know, I don't want to change anybody, or I don't want someone who's into, you know, some fads and whatnot, or is going to tell me about nutrition. I just want people who are really interested in a science-based analysis of their diet, and that want the information. So, but Nancy Clark is a good one to work with young athletes. That's the kind of person that's really good for that.
I've used her book before and given information out. So
yeah,
thank you. It was very good, Chris. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So just let me know. You can go to my Nutrimentals and look it over. My email address is everywhere there. Just email me and let me know if you'd like to be a volunteer. And then we can set up a time to meet on Zoom and do it.
And we'll send out these slides to, I'll send them out to our distribution list, and I'll copy Marion so she can send them out to your club as well. And then we'll make sure your email is like right there, and all the links, I think, right up top. I'm also recording this, so I'll have a recording.
Yeah, my email is just cpelkman@mynutrimentals.
Right.
Yeah, it's on the website.
But you know, it might be too hard for some people.
Yeah.
Not the people here today. I mean, other people who may have missed the talk. And
oh, I see Joyce is already. I'm going to tell her to email me.
All right. Well, so next month, I think it's May 11th. We have another Chris. Chris Haar is going to be speaking about pre-ride checks and basic maintenance. And we're looking forward to that. Have a lot of promotion on that. And if you know anybody,
that's something I don't know much about. I can't wait to see that.
I know there's a lot of topics that I almost wish we could do it all in one week. But if anybody has any other ideas, I send out a list of topics, including knitting. Nobody picked up. That was actually just a joke during the pandemic. I thought, you know, we're all friends. Let's just get together on Zoom and talk about stuff. But yeah, if you know somebody who you think they might not have thought that might be worth sharing, but conversations come up all the time across the club, and you think, I would like to hear more about that, or other people might. So that's what we're looking for. So
yes.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you all for coming. It was very nice talking to you.
No,
And if there's,
terrific talk.
Thanks. This was great. Thank you.
All
Terrific.
right.
thank you.
Night.
Chris, I have to ask you,
Yeah.
are you going with
Thank you.
with Andy tomorrow?
No, he's going hiking, but he's doing a solo hike.
Appalachian, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. He'll
Yeah, I
be finished
was like,
Pennsylvania. Yeah, he'll be finished Pennsylvania tomorrow or next week.
Crazy.
Yeah.
You're not going with him.
No.
All right.
Thank you, Christine. It was wonderful.
All
Yeah,
right,
I'm glad
thanks.
you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right. Good
Thank you,
night.
appreciate it. Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Michelle, for sharing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, for inviting me. It was fun.
Yep, I learned a lot.
Good. Glad. All right, I'm going to sign off.
Yep. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.